The New York Rangers, they continue to reshape their roster this season as they made another deal that went down on Saturday. So let's break down the latest trade for the Blueshirts and more. We're going to do it with a writer covering the Rangers with Forever Blueshirts. His name is Matthew Mugno, and he joins me now. Matt, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I know we got in touch yesterday about the trade, and I actually had the chance on a broadcast. This is like a 1 in a million chance. One of the prospects involved happened to play for Cornell men's ice hockey D1 program, and they were coming to RPI. So the ice hockey team that I call games for play-by-play, he happened to be on the opposing side. So it was really cool. Day of a trade. I cover the Rangers, and then I'm also luckily enough broadcasting a game that the prospect involved in yesterday's trade was in.
Hey, it's funny how things all come together, right? And you have these connections that come together, so you can't complain about that. All right, Matt, let's get into it. So Chris Drury, he makes another deal before Friday's trade deadline, and here are the deets for the trade. The Blueshirts, they agreed to a trade on Saturday to send defenseman Ryan Lindgren for Jimmy Vesey and the rights to unsigned 2021 draft pick Hank Kempf to the Avalanche in exchange for center Juuso Parssinen and veteran defenseman Calvin de Haan. Now, the trade also includes draft picks coming back to the Rangers, a conditional second round and conditional fourth round selection, both in this year's draft. So what did you make of this deal for the Rangers when you learned about it?
Dexter, I think you're a baseball guy too. I know that. It's kind of like the home run that just finds its way out of the park, right? Like I wouldn't say it's a triple decker, but for what Chris Drury was dealing with this season and what he was able to make out of two assets that are unrestricted free agents going into this summer, right? One of them, Ryan Lindgren, a warrior. His run from 2020 to 2024, just like this core, he was a crucial piece, but his play style was physical and it really took a toll on his body this season. With the way that trended, we've seen this with some defensemen in the past within the organization, namely Dan Girardi and Mark Stahl. I think the organization looked at those potentially and learned from them, or at least know that what you have right now is a player that you likely shouldn't extend for term. And that's what Ryan Lindgren was going to look for. He was playing top pair minutes with Norris Trophy winner in 2021, Adam Fox, who is now on the IR. And with that situation, they said, this is time to move on from this player. Jimmy Vesey, a player that came out of the 2022 training camp on a player tryout, a PTO contract. He then was extended 2 years. If you told us 3 years ago that Vesey would still be on the roster, I think you'd be shocked. That's maximizing value out of an asset. And they were able to get a return for two players that likely would not sign or the organization would not sign come July 1st. So I think in this deal, what was going out, you got a return for, and what was coming in, a veteran defenseman in Calvin de Haan, who's familiar with New York City. He was a New York Islander, a top pick in 2009 for the club. And Juuso Parssinen, a 24-year-old center. This organization does not have a center in their prime. All three of their centers are above 30 years old. They're all NHL veterans. You're getting a center in return that's young and has a ceiling. How high is that ceiling? We will see the rest of the season. But Parssinen's big, strong, and 24 years old. There's promise in his play.
All right, so you got some upside there with Parssinen, who was on the Rangers' radar for a little bit, and they're able to bring him back here. And you talked about maximizing the value of Lindgren and VC in this trade. We'll see if that happens for them. So we're under a week until the trade deadline. Does this deal ensure that the Rangers will be sellers at the deadline? And should the Blueshirts be buyers or sellers before we get to Friday's deadline?
I think everyone initially thought it was going to be a mix of both. But with this deal, and now with Riley Smith tonight in 2 hours, he won't be in the lineup against the Nashville Predators, held out for roster management reasons, which likely means he will be traded. I think they're going to lean towards selling those assets that we knew would likely be moved, especially with the way this season has gone. And they've also moved a number of players over the course of the season, namely Captain Jacob Trouba and Capo Caco, last summer Barclay Goodrow. And moving forward, I think they may sell the easy targets And that may set up an ambitious trade deadline for March 7th. Whether a move happens before then or not, we may see another player moved that might maximize their value at the time that the team can. Chris Kreider, although injury riddled, and Keandre Miller, who has an injury currently, they could be names to watch. I don't know for certain if those are names that will go. The names that we anticipated were Lindgren, Vesey, Riley Smith. But with the way this is trending, if there's a good deal to strike up and a player available and a team willing to take or talk about certain players, then I think we could see more selling than buying at this trade deadline.
I do find that interesting, Matt, because it's very interesting to see what Chris Drury will try to do here. Is he going to try to continue to maximize the value with this roster while trying to keep them competitive? And that brings me to my last question for you here, because the Rangers, they enter play on Sunday before they play the Predators. They're 4 points behind the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets for the final two playoff positions in the Eastern Conference. What do you need to see from this team before Friday's trade deadline that would make you believe that they will be playing postseason hockey this year? Because Rangers fans are still hoping for that, but what do you need to see from them this week that'll make you say, okay, the Blueshirts can get it done and they can be playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I think that this team has shown us enough this season. I think what this situation is, if this team can make the postseason, that is a plus. If not, it's a build year. You get players that are rookies like Brett Berard, Brennan Othman, and potentially when the NCAA Men's Ice Hockey Championship is over in April, Boston College prospect Gabriel Perreault, potentially Drew Fortescue, another defensive prospect in the system. If you can get these players to play, including players on the roster like Will Cooley and Matt Rempe, Alexis Lafreniere, more experience in elevated roles, then I think that is a win for the team right now. If they make the playoffs, again, that's great. I think the target goal is in the summer to restructure this roster and to reboot the core. I think this core has run its course, and you still have one of the best goaltenders in the world and very good players, including JT Miller, who they brought in right before the Four Nations tournament. So I think this season they've shown us what they are, and if they can make the playoffs by winning games down the stretch, that's fantastic. That's great experience for this group. I do think that it does spell for change in the summer, though, and we know that's coming.
Yeah, we know that's coming, and things have been changing thus far this season with the Rangers very active on the trade market, and we will see what they will do before Friday's trade deadline. That is Matthew Mugno. Check him out with Forever Blueshirts, doing a great job covering the Rangers. Matt, appreciate the time. We will talk some more hockey soon. Thank you so much, sir.
Dexter, last year I know we were talking about Stanley Cup. Hopefully, next time I'm talking to you, it's about a different team and maybe one with a little more hope in the locker room.
Yeah, I hope that for you and the Rangers fans out there, because there hasn't been too much of that this year. But we'll see how things progress going down the rest of the season. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
Of course.